seatbelts and all that. Some of you, it's only half now without Jimmy, and he's giving me a really big smile now. So basically this is me again. I've been working with foss since '99. Somebody asked me the break before after '99. I joined the new project '99. That was about it. And the first thing I did at the new project was they had some comment that, well, you seem to be pedantic. And so I thought, how about you start with compliance? Oh, no, what is that? Okay, I'll do that. So I've been doing compliance since '99. Mainly, over the last couple of years, been mainly thinking about the company perspective, but I come from the hacker perspective on compliance. Again, doing FSFE way back. I was a teacher. I used to do telecom before Jimmy was born. Embedded. Now it's been open source and compliant over the last decade. Oh, so Lucas is here as well. That's right. More lawyers. I'm still trying to suck less, even more so. So this is going to be one-on-one. There's no AI whatsoever in this presentation. I don't think so. A couple of disclaimers. I'm not a lawyer. This is an introduction. When doing an introduction, in 30 minutes, you need to simplify. So if it's many or mostly, I don't know. But there's going to be simplification. And some of you will notice when I'm simplifying. But that is what it is. Okay, first of all, we need to, there's some common ground. Copyright, I'm not going to do copyright for 3 hours, don't worry. So it's basically, you write something and you get it right. If you're the original author, possibly in Sweden, for example, if you're employed by, if you write the code for your employer, then your employer gets the copyright. But if we don't have copyright, nobody can use it. So we apply a license. The copyright holder can give you a license to use the software. So copyright and license done in 35 seconds. What is free software? Okay. How many know about the full freedom? Oh, it's got to be more. Yeah. Okay, so basically, you should be able to run the software as you like to. Can't run it on Mondays, unless it's Monday the 21st of April. You should be able to run it. You should be able to run it, study it. You should be able to distribute it, and to distribute modified copies, for example. So I've said distribute 2 times here. Going back to that. Then we have the open source definition, which goes something like, here's 10 criteria. One of them, number 7, says distribution of license. Free distribution number 1. So you see, it's going to circle around distribution. More on that later. So foss summary. Use, study, share, and improve. Source code for the software is made available. Ooh, that's short. So what is a free and open source license? It's a license that implements the full freedom using permissions and conditions. I've used the word terms, I've used the words, I don't want to, no, I'm not going to say what I've had used, I'm going to say what I'm using now. We've settled in a project for saying permissions and conditions, and that's all. Much easier. And what is a permission? So a software license can give you the permission to distribute source code. It can give you the permission to distribute form. When you distribute binary in binary form, there might be a condition saying that if you distribute this software as a binary, you need to provide the license tag to the users. There might be a condition saying if you distribute this in binary form and then you're combining in some way, then you need to use the same license as the component. I'm coming back to this, but this is basically what a condition is. So you get a permission, you can do this if you do Then we have the license, let's see if you can react, the license called public domain. So it's not a license, but think of it as a concept. And you have licenses mimicking that. But it's not really a license. Then we have something called fopen. For those of you who know French, it's a play on word, saying that it's not an open source license at all, it's a fake open source license, disguising as an open source license. I'm going to avoid these, but mind you, there are tons of licenses that look like an open source license, but they're not. Finally, compliance. I did it. 6 minutes. Okay. So we need a bit more foundation. We have a program. He's so clever. So we have a program, and typically your program has a couple of dependencies. I'm going to use the word links to because it conveys some kind of that I'm creating C-style linking. So if my program here uses A and B, when the program is executed, it's executed in the same process or memory space, so they are linked together. They typically create a combined work. Questions here, or is that okay? Cool. So, okay, whoops. Your program uses open source components. Okay. That means, I'm going to stress this again, the licenses of these open source components have permissions and conditions. So, for example, if I want to use, if I want to distribute a binary, then I need to see, do I have the permission to do this? If I don't, I can't do it. If I have the permission to do it, what are the conditions? Oh, a lawyer just nodded at me, that's good. So in practice, for this to be, or yeah, in practice, you need to identify all your dependencies, not the first level, not the one you write in your requirements file in Python, for example, each and every one. And you need, for those, you need to identify the licenses. Not the first ones, not the first level dependencies, each leading dependency. Identify how you use the components. We touched upon this earlier. So if you use Bash, for example, on the side to set up an environment or create a config file that another process or another program is reading, that's not linking. So you need to figure out how you use components. And do you modify it? You need to make sure there are no license incompatibilities. It's tough word. What does that mean? We're coming back to this, but it might be that if we create a compliant work with 200 components, the license for this component here and the license for this component here may give you permission to do whatever you want to do, but the conditions here, let's say, well, you can't do A, and this license here says you must do A. So you cannot do A and must do A at the same time. So there might be a conflict between licenses, and you can't have it. And of course, you got to comply with the license conditions, meaning that if a license says you must provide the source code to your users, then you must do that. Okay. So all of a sudden, I said you need to identify all the dependencies for your program. So when I wrote my program, I wanted to use A and B, but it turns out that I'm also using C and D and E. So, but now I only need to check my first level dependencies. No, because you need all these dependencies to run. You need all these components to run, so you've got to comply with everyone. There's no way around that. identify the licenses, sometimes easy, sometimes really tricky. I could spend 4 days talking about how you identify the licenses and how you don't, but there's no time. So this is roughly what we need to check. And how, I'm stressing this again, how do you use your component? Do you use the component GCC as a compiler? Well, that's probably okay, that's one use case. Do you use it as a library? That's another use case. Do you use it for tests? Third use case, etc., etc. Depending on these use cases, you trigger, I shouldn't say you have or have not some other conditions. How you provide the component is important. So we discussed earlier today the use of GPLv2. Well, it might be problematic if you want to put it in a car and you want to have a proprietary license of your software, but it's doable if you provide a REST API. So I have a GPL component here, and I have a program using the GPL component. If I'm providing you a service over a REST API, it's fine. So it's important to know how you provide the software. Have you modified the component? Also plays in. Sometimes it's really recommended not to modify the component because the conditions for that, oh God, we can't do that. So, but it's important. So it's if you see a table, well, here's a compatibility chart. Oh, that's so great, blah, blah, blah. Well, do you know this? This is where you need to solve. Sorry if I'm breaking, if you don't want to hear it. So for example, you may have developer tools like the linter. The linter, I bet there is no linter introducing anything into your binary. I would be surprised. You can have a unit test tool. I would be surprised as well. Perhaps it generates some documentation. I don't know. You're probably using Git, etc. These are typically not distributed. However, it may be that they are typically not part of your combined work. They are not part of your program. But some licenses require that you provide help me out here, the corresponding, build tool now, the build instructions. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. But you need to provide the build instruction. And then it might be easier to provide the development tools, your scripts, blah, 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 blah. So sometimes you need to provide some of the development tools. But there are cases where you use G++, the C++ compiler. In order to run the resulting binary, you need a library from GCC or G++. So then all of a sudden the development tools are actually part of what you need to distribute in order for your program to execute. So you see here, what I'm trying to convey is that it's important to know how you use, which components you use, how you use them, etc., etc. I wish it were easier, but it's. When I proceed here, I'm going to assume that we link to a couple of unmodified components and we distribute the combined work under a license. Let's see what happens then. We have a couple of license categories, open source license categories. Let's look at permissive. Very few conditions. Basically, most of them say, if you use this component, you need to distribute, you need to provide the license space, copyright information to your users, and you need to, that's it. Quite easy. That's the only condition. So if you use a library under MIT from your program, perfectly fine, you can do whatever you want. The modifications, if you modify it, do whatever you want. Put whatever license you want on the combined work. No problem whatsoever. However, if you go weak content, It's preserving the permissions and conditions on the open source component. So if you're using a library under LGPL, which is a weak copyleft license, you can put whatever license you want on your program, but the modifications to this component need to be under the weak copyleft license. Confusing? Okay, cool. It's a 101. Strong copyleft. Strong sounds cool. Especially for, if you look at my muscles. It's something I want to be, but I'm not. So if you have a strong, if you use a strong copyleft component, a library here, the modifications, just as with the weak, they need to be under the same license. But your program now must be under that license. So this license requires you to use the same license as this one. No questions? Screen share? Okay. Cool. Then web copyleft, I would say, if we dive into this, where we need 1 hour. So I'm skipping that. There are some conditions here which I haven't brought up. There could be conditions on the way, on patterns. There could be a condition on advertisement. So if you use this component, then you need to put in your advertisement material a note saying this and that. What is advertisement material? I don't know exactly. Might be something. Another thing, we can have license expressions. So MIT is a license, ISK, or how do you say it? I always say ISK, it might be ISC, I don't know. So in the first case of a dual license, you are free to choose one of them. Oh, so you should go MIT, no, I want to go ISK, oh, that's fine. But if you end up, or if you get a component under MIT and ISK, you need to fulfill the conditions on both licenses. Have something that I touched on earlier. If you put in a car, a program that is doing navigation. Next to that, side by side, is a program called Bash. There might be some other program. They do not link. They're just, they're put on the same device. Just as you put programs on CDs before. How many got a CD from a magazine earlier? All sort of us. We're all, I'm old. So, to one of the important things, how am I doing on time? Okay. We need to check license compatibility, and I said that earlier. So, my program there is using A, B, C, D, E. I need to be fulfilling the conditions of each and every license. So can I distribute this, the combined work under MIT? Well, MIT is obviously compatible with MIT. Is MIT okay with LGPL? That was a weak copyleft license. So I have to keep the license of the component B, but I can choose whatever license I want on the combined work here. BC3 goes easy, blah, blah, blah. But how do you know this in a big environment? In one case, I had a component. I checked the component for, do we have any Red Hat or GNOME hackers here? No? There used to be a browser called Galileo. I created a dependency tree, and I calculated the number of combinations. So if you have license A or B, and in some places we have C or E, blah, blah, blah. The combinations that I had to calculate had 100 digits. Totally impossible to calculate. So you need to do a couple of tricks. But it's quite easy to calculate this. I'm going to show you an example here. And in this case, by default, this program, like on Toolkit, says that since you didn't tell me anything. I'm assuming you're using the license work as a library, you're doing binary distribution, blah, blah, blah. So can I use an inbound license? That's what IL means. The IL here is inbound license. Can I use an inbound license if I have an outbound license, MIT? And you get an answer quite quick. This is something you can do. You can provide the same tool with like a project specification of your entire dependency tree, and it will calculate whether or not you are compatible or your licenses are compatible. You find this at softwarecompliance.org. What I'm talking about, that's cool. I just wanted to mention that part of the work I'm presenting here is sponsored by NLNet. How many have heard of NLNet? Okay. If you have an idea that you think is cool, go visit NLNet's website. They're great people to work with. Some other tools that might be interesting for you if you want to check compatibility on large scale. It's nowadays quite quick. I would say, yeah, it is quick. How many have used a tool called Flick? Nobody. That's not okay. Come on. It's replaced now by what I call Toolkit. Some other efforts where we need your help. We're redoing classifications. Oh boy, this is going to sound so boring when you hear it. But we need to start classifying licenses another way to assist the compliance work. So when you distribute your binary, you need to have a list of, oh, you need to do this and that and this and that for this component, these three things for that component, etc. So if you want to join us there, we're looking at how to curate. Sorry, I can't go into detail about what license curation is. We are discussing the usage scenarios. What is how do you use a component? How do you provide it, etc. Please contact me afterwards if you want to join. I hope there's some room for questions. And here's the links. The presentation is not pushed version yet, but it will be in a couple of minutes. Do we have time for questions? Yes. Okay, questions. Let's get on.
I'm sure maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but you talked a lot about linking, but we just said linking, although as far as I'm aware, a lot of these language licenses have a distinction between static linking and dynamic linking.
It doesn't really matter that much.
Oh, really? Okay. Because I thought, for instance, that LGPL only works if you link dynamically.
No. It's way tougher to comply with LGPL if you statically link. Because then you need to provide a main.o, and you need to provide scripts for the user to then recombine, the stuff with your main file, and create a new static. So if you distribute a binary, your binary, with the LGPL library here, then the user just takes away that and put in a modified version, and it just works. That's the main difference. Lawyers, do you disagree? Do you agree? It's awfully quiet. Okay. Of course, you can't ask a lawyer for yes and no.
Maybe you heard of the Euro Office only Office dispute. Do you have an opinion on it?
I don't have an opinion. The license is clear. I don't see a problem at all. I could see. I can feel their frustration, but they chose a license which permits 4 people. Here.
What's your favorite license?
I wouldn't go, you know what? Kim knows here, I used to be a teacher, and no one knows here that in my profession, my favorite answer, it depends on. But I usually go GPL V3. Remember, I come from the GNU project, and especially nowadays, I think that we are seeing that copyleft is actually doing quite a good job. So, yeah, I'm a strong copyleft fan.
So you used the term linking several times. Is there any sort of established precedent for what, like, the equivalent of that is in, like, non-C languages, for example, Python?
No, don't say Python.
Or others, pick your favorite, that's fine. But any, you know, if I am using Python or another language, and I want to know...
I think the Python Software Foundation says that the, you know, corresponding import there. But even though you're using that module in your binary, when it's running in the same address space, they don't see that as linking. Whereas if you go to FSF, that's linking. So your legal office or whatever probably needs to decide. Yeah, so then I would not say anything about that.
All right, cheers.
That was a really bad answer, by the way.
So at my company, we have a weird dependency where the library says, it doesn't say what the license it has. Instead, it has a regular text file in your Git repo that says, some of the stuff here might be under this license, and some things might be under this license, or maybe even something else. And what are our responsibilities in this situation? How can we
Identify the license. Your responsibility is to identify the license.
But they don't say it.
No, so you need, we can discuss that later, but I'll give a brief answer. You need to scan the source code, preferably using a dedicated scanner rather than using a grep statement by itself. So download the software of that component, scan it, and analyze the results. It might be, one of my favorite examples is Cairo, the 2D engine, where you have some of the tools that, you know, on the GPL, the library is on the MDPLB 2.1, or MDL. You have some GPL2 script, you have everything. You have the documentation and another. So you, but we can discuss that later. I'll help you. But it's roughly boils down to scanning. I'd say you always need to scan, because if you look at the license for, let's go Cairo then. Again, my favorite package. On GitHub, it says, this is released under LGPL and MDL2. When you scan the source code, when you have a dedicated program that scans and analyzes Cairo, you find 20 or 30 different licenses, and you need to combine with every license that you use. Sorry.
Right, final few questions, maybe one or two, before we break for coffee.
And this baby, cool, that's the best.
Okay, you mentioned code scanning. Do you have any specific tool in mind? Like we've come across ScanOSS, for example. Any thoughts on that?
My tag here says about code, so I would say it's kind of toolkit. There's a number of, you have Fossology. Does ScanOSS do the scanning of the source code?
Yeah, there's a pre-scan.
Yeah, okay. Fossology, Ninka. Debian has their own tool, don't they?
License check.
Or is, who wrote license C? Is that Google? There's a couple of them. Stay with me.
Thanks.
Your first thought is no way. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.